Tennessee Life is sponsored by
Mid-South Sewing and Fabric has what you need for your creative adventure. If it's sewing, embroidery, or vinyl projects you need for a home business, Etsy, Pinterest, and your family, we have it. Mid-South Sewing sells Brothers Sewing and Embroidery machines and the latest scan and cut crafting machine. Mid-South Sewing and Fabric in the Gallery Shopping Center.
Tennessee Life is also brought to you by The Flower Pot. For over 100 years, offering flowers and same-day delivery with 2 convenient Knoxville locations. KnoxvilleFlowerPot.com. And by viewers like you. Thank you. Coming up on this edition of Tennessee Life, we take a closer look at the history of country music and its roots in our state. David West has not only played his banjo with country music greats, his Ciderville Music Store is a place you can buy an instrument, jump in on a jam session, or gaze at the history on the walls.
I appreciate the talent that God gave me to do this. And it was one thing I said when I was real young. And I said, Lord, if you'll let me pick a banjo, I'll pick for anybody that asks me.
A chance meeting with the son of famed musician A.P. Carter led this luthier to create a special commemorative guitar, modeled after the one played by a man known as the father of country music.
AP's original guitar, the one that he owned, I was able to have it in my hands and blueprint it and take some photos, which was a big deal. It was an amazing thing to hold that kind of piece of history, to hold the guitar of the man who was responsible for gathering so many songs and preserving so many songs. So from that point, that's what I based the A.P. Carter commemorative guitar off of, was his personal guitar.
Old-time music lives on at the Mountain Music Museum in Kingsport, where instruments and artifacts connect you to the pioneers of country music.
When these guys, and I'm talking about guys like Doc Watson and Dr. Ralph and a lot of these guys that started around this area, their intentions were to live their life and live their life in a great way. And their way of doing things after work was, going on the back porch or the front porch or, moving the rug out in the living room floor and everybody just having a good time. It was a way of life. It wasn't that they wanted to be millionaires or well-known, maybe a few of them. But I think that most of these guys were just happy doing what they were doing.
Those stories next on this edition of Tennessee Life.
Thanks for joining us for this special country music edition of Tennessee Life. I'm Vicki Lawson. In Powell, you'll find Ciderville Music Store, open since 1958. And inside you'll find owner David West, a picker who played on local television for years. We sat down with David as he picked us a tune and learned more about his career and the legendary guitar shop. David, that was great. Tell me, when did you first get interested in playing the banjo?
Well, when I started playing the banjo, I guess that's when I got interested in it. I started out on a harmonica and then a guitar, and it made the banjo easier, I guess. And that's when I heard the banjo, I said, that's got to be it.
Tell me about getting your first banjo.
Well, I wanted a banjo so bad, and I just couldn't afford one. And my daddy ran a produce route, and somebody on his route had a banjo. And I think he traded his pocket watch for it. He wanted me to have it because I wanted it so bad. And I got a no open back, and then I like to run everybody crazy at home because he probably wish he hadn't got it, but anyhow, it paid off later.
When did you first open Ciderville here, and how old were you?
Another feller had opened up selling cider, and I was a 13-year-old, and I sold cider for him. And he built the barrel that you see outside, and it was built in 55. In 58, he moved from here, and he said, you ought to keep this business going. So he gave me part of the stuff and refrigerators and things. I opened up right there. Had $16 saved up.
So is that how Ciderville got its name?
Yeah, that's how it got its name, because we made cider here. See, back when he had it, we made trailer loads of cider, and I still got one of the machines over here. It was something to see. It was interesting.
Tell me about some of the first customers that came in.
The first famous person was Don Gibson, and he was playing on top of the hill, up here on top of the hill. Jerry Lee and Don and them would play up there, and he was playing up there when he got old on to me. We just had so many people like Chet Adkins. We had Kitty Wells, Bobby Wright from McHale's Navy, Alex Haley, and a lot of the great politicians like Senator Lamar Alexander and people like that. There's just been so many people here. It'd just be so hard. It'd take an hour to name them all.
What about any famous musicians? Did any of them buy their instruments here from you?
Yeah. Sonny Osmond, you remember Rocky Top? Sonny Osmond was one of the Osmond brothers, and he bought his D45 from me. Willie Nelson's band, they called me. They bought, I believe, 8 Martins. I know one year his wife called and ordered 2 Willie Nelson guitars for her kids. So, and they would call me from the bus, and sometimes Willie would holler, "Tell David hi," on the bus. You hear him holler up there.
Tell me how you got connected and got started on the Cass Walker Show.
Well, it's kind of strange on that. I hadn't told very many people. I had apartments in here, and Fred Smith, you remember Red and Fred? Fred rented for me. We were door to door apartments, and his car broke down. Now, the first time I was with him, the entertainers had gone, and he hired a group out of Georgia, had a big bus, and we traveled. And they hired me for them. I worked in their band. As a regular, was Fred's car broke down, and I had to drive him up there. And that's 5:30 to 7, that's hard to do. And me and him was playing shows together at night. And I had to get up at 4:30 to get up there at 5:30. And Mr. Walker just came through. Of course, he knew me, and I'd been there before. I just always wondered what he thought. I guess he thought I come for a job. And he walked by, he walked with his shoulder down and said, "Dan, get David a check this week. I put him on payroll." And everybody looked and said, "Did you ask him for a job?" I said, "No, I'm playing every night. I can't, that's going to be hard to do." But I thought, I can't tell him no, because he's just such a great guy, and he thinks that much of me. So I went ahead and went to work for him. He was just a guy that I looked up to. I learned more from him. They asked me here a while back, said, "What is it like working for Cass Walker?" I said, "It's like going to college."
Tell me about some of the historic items that you've got of his.
So many people comes in and they'll say, "Can I ask you a question?" I say, "Yeah." They'll say, "Can I pick out an item and you give me the story?" And I do. This little guitar we have over here was made in the commercial where this lady comes in and somebody busted his guitar down over her head, and Mr. Walker says, "Don't buy no cheap guitar." She goes around her neck, that was one. And one of the historical things I have is a Cass Walker's chair sitting over here with a kind of a statue of him sitting in it. This artist did the face with his glasses and his hat and his shirt, his tie, and his scissors.
Tell me a little bit about your country music history yourself, bands that you played with and things that you've got to do.
We got to play, the biggest show I ever played was at the White House. We played the 1982 4th of July picnic, and that was the year that Wayne Newton played, because the Beach Boys and them had they had a conflict. And we got to be opened up. We played in front of the band for Wayne Newton. He was there with us. And they estimated 1 million people. It's the most people I ever saw. And I looked at it, I never saw so many people. And I said, "Good night." Where the Washington Monument is, and that water and all, that was covered. Sometimes I do sit and reminisce of what I got to do and where I got to do it. And then there's some of them I don't want to remember. Hey, I used to tell them, I've got thrown out some pretty nice places too.
This wasn't a place you could just come and buy the instruments, but you played here,
Yeah.
and you could come and play.
Well, you could come in and you could sit down and pick. And on Saturday, we still have a lot of picking. Any day we do. And then we sell a lot of high-dollar guitars like Martin. And people all over the country comes here for that. And I say, try them out. We got rooms back there if you want to hear it by yourself. Take it back there and try it out. Be sure you get the one you want. If people come in, will you help me pick a guitar? And I say, no. I can't help you pick a Martin guitar or your wife. Them are personal. You need to pick those two. And it was one thing I said when I was real, real young. And I said, "Lord, if you'll let me pick a banjo, I'll pick for anybody that asks me." I think that's the reason that everybody can pick here and want to, because I make them feel welcome.
David, thank you for sharing your Ciderville music story with us, as well as your wonderful passion and your great career.
It's been a great honor to be on it, and I hope everybody out there can have as much fun as I can when they see it or hear it.
Will you share a song with us?
I will. I'll take the old 5-string banjo, as flat and scrubs you say. This was the very first tune I learned on the banjo.
Later on Tennessee Life, explore country music history at the Mountain Music Museum in Kingsport. But next, a musician and guitar maker pays tribute to country music great A.P. Carter by handcrafting limited edition instruments, just like the one he used to play.
A musician and guitar maker in Greenville is paying tribute to country music pioneer A.P. Carter by building guitars in his honor. And as we learned in Tony Vine's workshop, when building handmade instruments, it's all about the detail.
In guitar making, the most exciting thing is viewing a piece of wood and seeing a guitar. Anytime I pick up a piece of wood, that's what I see, is a musical instrument. Music has always been a hugely important part of my life, even before I started playing. As a child, I used to listen to my brother play guitar, and my mom played some piano and auto harp, and I just knew it was more how it made me feel. And I knew that it was maybe an avenue that I could express something about myself using something other than words. When I was about 14, my parents sold their high school class rings to buy me a guitar. I'll never forget it. It was a very generous thing. At the time I didn't know, because I was only 14, how big of a deal that was. I am a self-taught musician just by listening to what I've heard on the radio, on records as a child. I remember when I was young, I used to take the speakers and put up around my head before I had headphones and listen to Chet Atkins, at the age of 14. I guess I was kind of a musical nerd. I really wanted to be a drummer, and I did explore that quite a bit at a young age, but the guitar seemed to speak a little more to my soul. I was in a rock band in the late 80s, and had the hair to prove it. But we had pretty good success, and I was the drummer, but as what was going on the side, I had an acoustic guitar at home and a little 4-track recorder, and I was recording these really pretty laid-back instrumental songs. So you have this, on one side of the coin is rock drummer with this long hair, and on the other side of the coin, the guitar became more of an instrument to express things that were deeper inside of me. Early on, I had this cheaper acoustic guitar. I quickly found out that my store-bought guitar would not intonate properly, wouldn't play in tune. So that got me interested in what I needed to do to get a guitar that would play in tune when I would change the tuning. So one thing led to another, and next thing you know, I sold my drums. I bought some wood and a book. This was the days before the internet. And I think I bought a little drill press and some sandpaper, and naively thought I could make a guitar. 6 months later, I built a guitar. I have the finished product, and it sounded great. It looked really rough, but it was promising. That was 30 years ago, so now here you go. I guess I could have sold my drums when I was young and just bought a guitar, but where would be the fun in that? The challenge was to build my own guitar. For the last 30 years, I've made around 200 guitars, and it's been quite a journey. Years ago, around 1996, 97, somewhere in there, I had the privilege of meeting Joe Carter. And Joe Carter is the son of A.P. and Sarah Carter of the original Carter family. And at the time, Joe was looking for someone to make him a guitar out of mulberry. And I'd never heard a guitar made from mulberry, but he said he had heard a fiddle once made of mulberry, and it was, according to Joe, it was the best fiddle he had ever heard. We became friends. He started to frequent my shop, and eventually I built him a few guitars out of mulberry mostly. A few months later, after I'd met Joe, Our relationship started to grow into something like two high school buddies. And then I began to talk to Joe about doing a guitar in honor of his father, A.P. And at that point I started to do research on A.P. Carter and started to listen to Joe tell his stories about his father and Joe about his own childhood. From stories about A.P. Carter and the time that he would wander through the hills and the mountains gathering songs. He was quite a great song gatherer. When I had the idea for the A.P. Carter guitar and talked to Joe about it, of course he immediately wanted to find the tree. He was excited about that. And he had that gift of finding trees, and he tells me his daddy A.P. did too, that they could spot trees from miles away, and I've been a woodworker for 30 years and I can't do that. So it's an amazing gift. So Joe was excited to find the tree, and I think he was more excited to find the tree than he was about the guitar. Part of what makes the A.P. Carter commemorative guitar special is the fact that Joe himself signed the interior label that goes in each one, which in turn is a blessing on the idea and a blessing of the sacrifices that his father made to music and to all of us musicians. A.P.'s original guitar, the one that he owned, I was able to have it in my hands and blueprint it and take some photos by the good graces of the family, which was a big deal. It was an amazing thing to hold that kind of piece of history, to hold the guitar of the man who was responsible for gathering so many songs and preserving so many songs. So from that point, that's what I based the A.P. Carter commemorative guitar off of, was his personal guitar. And add to that, it's the father of country music's personal guitar. That's a pretty big responsibility. It was a little scary, but challenging. One of the special features about the A.P. Carter guitar is the optional pickguard. And is what it is, it's an inlay of A.P. Carter into an ebony pickguard. And we have the A.P. Carter signature. I cut this out of mother of pearl. And then we have the portrait of A.P., which is done in wood, rosewood and maple and walnut. And his face is done in a material called corian. And is what I do, I put the corian under a stereo microscope and engrave it with one little dot at a time using a sewing needle. The A.P. Carter guitar comes with a certificate of authenticity, and it states where the wood came from, which is the Mesa Spring community, where the Carter family resided, where the A.P. Carter store is, where the Carter family fold is, which to me was a big deal that the tree came from that community if it's going to honor A.P. Carter. When I met Joe Carter, the type of music that I personally listened to did not include the Carter family and some of the older songs. But the more research I began to do and the more I got to know Joe, I seen how important it was. Because A.P. and the whole Carter family was so dedicated to music. And when I started to explore and listen to more of the original Carter family, and more specifically listen to the songs that A.P. himself sang, it moved me in a way that I can't explain. Because it's my roots. Any musician should explore the early music because it tells a story of humanity, where we were and what we've come from.
The Tri-Cities region of Tennessee is rich with country music history. We visit the Mountain Music Museum in Kingsport, where the stories of country music greats are on display.
The Mountain Music Museum has always honored country music, bluegrass music, old time, and it's been a steady rock for all of those type of artists to come to via the Picking Porch show, to come by every Thursday night and play music. We have a lot of connections with bluegrass and old time and country music people from a long time ago, family members, estates of those people. We found out that there are a lot of local people that are ancestors to a lot of the people that are in this museum. guess the most common thing that I see in guests to the Mountain Music Museum, whether it's coming in on Thursday nights for the Pick and Port show or taking a tour of the museum, is they're often astounded by something that they just did not know before they came in. The Mountain Music Museum was established in Bristol, Tennessee 20 years ago, but we have recently moved to Kingsport, where we have found support. The mission statement of the Appalachian Cultural Music Association is to foster the education of musical heritage wherever you live in this country. And of course, being in the Bristol, Kingsport, Johnson City area, we have a lot of that here. The ACMA is known for education, but also the starting of the Birthplace of Country Music Association here in Bristol. I think the main goal of moving to Kingsport, and just as a museum, the Mountain Music Museum as a whole, is to educate kids that are coming up and letting them understand about this musical heritage that they have, but it's also to educate adults too. Some adults come in and they're astounded at the artifacts they're going to see from the Carter family or the Stoneman family, or the artifacts that we have from the 27 sessions that actually happened all over this region. When we moved here, we found a really interesting piece of artifacture. The Magic City Trio, actually the Dykes family, were actually recording in New York City at the time that Ralph Peer was looking to come somewhere to record some great music for RCA Victor. These people were from Kingsport. So they sort of grabbed the ear of Ralph Peer and said, hey, you should come down to Bristol, Kingsport, and Johnson City in this area. Lo and behold, that's what happened. One of our largest exhibits is going to be Tennessee Ernie Ford exhibit that will honor his 100th birthday. Tennessee Ernie Ford came from Bristol. He was a Bristol native, moved to California, got discovered, and he turned into one of the biggest commercially successful country music stars that the world has ever seen. He had a great television show, sang on a lot of duets records with a lot of different artists, kind of closed the gap in what music should be and brought fun back to what music is. You can't walk away from the Mountain Music Museum without learning a little bit about Dr. Ralph Stanley. Dr. Ralph has influenced pop stars, rock stars, producers, a lot of people in Hollywood that would have never known anything about Dr. Ralph. They all say the same thing. Dr. Ralph Stanley did Dr. Ralph Stanley. When Dr. Ralph Stanley and Carter, his brother, came down from Wise County and wanted to play and be seen and be heard, they were some of the longest running guests on the show Farm and Fun Time at WCYB Television in Bristol. And those guys brought a lot of that backwoods sound to the Bristol area. And I think that Kingsport was one of their multiple stops along the way. I think one of the most incredible pieces that we have here is June Carter's dress. And we have a painted portrait of her out of her house that was donated by the Carter family. It just kind of brings together, you can see the life that her and Johnny were living. And it was a storybook kind of thing in a lot of aspects. It's not just a dress. There's a lot of stories behind that dress. Another great piece that we have is a video phone that was donated by the Acuff family. Roy Acuff bought this for his family. If they could not be at the Grand Ole Opry where he was going to be performing that night, they could actually cut a 78 record of this performance. And we have some of those acetates here in the museum also. They could make a 78 record of his performance and go back and listen to it later. We have a lot of visitors every year to the museum, and the great thing is they all walk out with a smile, knowing that they've learned maybe some little short story that they didn't know about their favorite artists, guys like Doc Watson and Dr. Ralph and a lot of these guys that started around this area. Their intentions were to live their life and live their life in a great way. And their way of doing things after work was, going on the back porch or the front porch or, moving the rug out in the living room floor and everybody just having a good time. It was a way of life. It wasn't that they wanted to be millionaires or well-known, maybe a few of them, but I think that most of these guys were just happy doing what they were doing. We need to keep teaching and moving forward and teaching about all this great music that's around us.
We hope you've enjoyed the stories and sounds of early country music in the Volunteer State. I'm Vicki Lawson. See you on the next Tennessee Life.
Tennessee Life is sponsored by
Mid-South Sewing and Fabric has what you need for your creative adventure. If it's sewing, embroidery, or vinyl projects you need for a home business, Etsy, Pinterest, and your family, we have it. Mid-South Sewing sells Brothers Sewing and Embroidery machines and the latest scan and cut crafting machine. Mid-South Sewing and Fabric in the Gallery Shopping Center.
Tennessee Life is also brought to you by The Flower Pot. For over 100 years, offering flowers and same-day delivery with 2 convenient Knoxville locations. KnoxvilleFlowerPot.com. And by viewers like you. Thank you